Greetings and salutations and welcome to Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner. Trev will be in here in a little bit, and we have a special guest coming to join us in the game to talk all things NFL draft. Gus, I'm sorry, joining us tonight, 7:30 Eastern here on YouTube and Facebook. Gus saying we better discuss Caps and Nats O series, or you might as well call this Ref the Redskins. I'm pretty sure district is still, appropriate for our DC based sports teams. We won't be discussing Caps today.
No.
Underneath the Stoner's deal here, let me remove it. Don't spoil the Cap score, please.
Please.
Caps did win game one in overtime. Ovi scoring his first one. Congrats. Awesome. That's the end of the Caps. That's the end of the Caps
discussion, right, not the end of the Caps.
This end of the Caps discussion. Okay. Nats, go Nats. Exciting young team. Don't have the pitching. And as far as getting all the other stuff, we'll see. You guys don't tend to respond very well when we bring in the other sports, so we don't tend to talk to those sports as much as we might enjoy it ourselves. Of course, we do talk things here for the Washington Commanders, and it's draft week, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the running backs that will be available at 29, whether or not Washington should go for one of those, maybe wait for a later one, or maybe take one of them with their 61st pick. All that's going to be here in the warm-up. During the game, we have Ryan Fowler from the Draft Network joining us to talk the NFL draft. Who are the players that we're missing out on? Who are the ones that we think that they should pick at 29? Who does he think Washington should hone in on as well with their 5 picks? That'll be in the game. Also, some history on the 29th pick. Stoner did some research on the players who were picked there, and I did some research on how often that was traded in the last 21 years. I went back to 2004 for this. So we have all that information for you in the game. And then the cool down, we will be talking mock draft, our last ones. Try to make it good and engaging and not so boring, as we know that some people kind of didn't care for last week's format. So we're going to change things up just a little bit, make sure things go smoothly. Let's get into it. As far as the Washington Commanders, I'm just going to have to cover up your name there again, Stoner. So I apologize. Hopefully nobody does spoil the Caps for you here on episode 222. Running for help. John Kine on his latest podcast said definitively Washington is looking to add a running back. He doesn't think they'll do it at 29. He's not even sure if they'll do it at 61, but they want to add one. It's going to be dependent on how the board lies and where they can find them. But he does suspect Washington's going to add a running back.
Yeah.
Do you feel the Commanders should use pick 29 or 61 on somebody like, I don't know, this guy on the screen right now, Henderson, who's the one we like? We do like ourselves some Trevion Henderson.
How can you not, right? He's a bona fide stud. I'm going to start off every time that I speak. I'm going to start off by saying, please don't say anything about the Cap score.
I know. I might actually spank your.
I want to have a clean start when I watch it after the show is over. Okay, so get that out of the way.
There, that way it's on the screen at all times. Stoner. There you go.
Well done. So look, running back at pick 29 or 61 or 128 or whatever. We had a good discussion about it. If you haven't checked it out, go to our channel and check out our discussion about the running back room. One thing I think we kind of failed to mention in all of this, and I'm totally against drafting a running back in the first round for sure. Look, we understand they've got 5 guys right now that they're bringing back, and all 5 of them are on the last year of their contract. So it kind of makes sense that for your future, you have to get a running back at some point. But I am also one of those guys who kind of thinks that there isn't anybody in this draft that will be available to you that is anything better than what you have right now, which is Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler are your 2 guys. So why do you want to use what little draft capital that you have on a running back? And that's really my biggest point in all of this. And maybe they get more draft picks by trading back. We'll see. But I just don't see you spending for sure pick 29 on a guy. And I want to back that up with a little bit of stats here, Nathan. When we're talking about drafting the guy in the first round, to include pick 29 late in the first round, people like the first round because you have that fifth year option to be able to give a guy, right? That's why a lot of people move into pick 29, 30, 31 so they can have a fifth year option on a guy. Well, that may be important at certain positions so that you don't have to pay them the big money, right?
Sure. Gives you delays that big paycheck.
Yep. And so you have quarterbacks who are most often people trade back in the first round to get a quarterback so you can have that fifth year of paying them rookie scale, right? Quarterbacks make $55 million a year on average. I went back and looked at the top 10 quarterbacks and how much they make. That makes sense that you can delay, like you said, the inevitable of having to pay a guy $55 million. You can pay him $13 million or whatever the rookie scale is at that, wherever they're picked. Wide receivers, $33 million. I mean, the wide receiver market has skyrocketed in the last couple of years. Jamar Chase is making $40 million a year. It makes sense to get a guy in the first round who's a wide receiver so that you can get those 5 years on his rookie. And just go through all of the lists. Edge rusher averages $28 million. Left tackle is $25 million. Corner is $24 million. Even a safety is $17 million. You know what it is for running backs? $15 million.
I was going to say it was anywhere from 10 to 15 is what I thought.
Yeah. So that's the average that you will have to pay a guy if he becomes a bona fide star. Saquon Barkley is the biggest star running back in the NFL right now. He's the highest paid, the most a running back has ever made. He makes $20 million a year. That's peanuts, relatively speaking, compared to what you're paying a quarterback. $55 million for Dak Prescott or whatever. That, for me, is a good reason to not get a running back in the first round, unless you think he is an absolute stud game changer. So at pick 29, I can't do it. And if Travion Henderson is there at pick 29, I can't do it.
You don't consider him a game changer?
No. Travion Henderson will be a very good back, and he will help a team, and he will make plays, but he's not Saquon Barkley, right? He's not Derrick Henry. He's not Christian McCaffrey. No. He might be Austin Eckler, or he might be, I don't know, give me somebody else who does a pretty darn good job, but is not a great running back.
Yeah, the one that we mentioned was Jahmyr Gibbs. Would you consider him a Jahmyr Gibbs style? That's where Detroit kind of moved up to take him a lot earlier than what most running backs would have been taken.
Yeah, and people were shocked. We were totally shocked when that happened, but it's obviously worked out for Detroit. Mm-hmm. So I can't justify it because they don't make a big enough change, a big enough of a game changer for you when you pick at 29. So I can't do it. I have more pressing needs on this team.
And you are a needs-based drafter.
I am a needs-based drafter.
Not a best player drafted. Franchise talk here. Thanks for joining us tonight. Let Genty fall to 29. If not, a running back needs to be in the fourth round. If Genty falls to 29, is he enough of a difference maker?
I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I haven't studied Ashton Genty because I didn't think he would be somebody who Washington would have a shot at. So I didn't study him. Everybody seems to say he's a top 10 pick running back. So if you go by what everybody else says, sure. But I didn't look at him because I know he's not going to be there.
Yeah, he's kind of like he should. If he's there, that might.
Yeah, I mean,
again, you take the best player available. Yeah. He would, in fact, be the best player available. We appreciate everybody jumping in live here this Wednesday. Locked On Law, wanting Mike Green for his birthday. Tomorrow is his birthday, so happy early birthday to you, Locked On Law. Mike Green is somebody that they did meet with, so that's a possibility if he's available at 29 there for you, locked. Doug in the house, we already talked with Gus Bus Jersey here as well. Franchise Talk had a little bit of that chat. Roger in the house, Ellison here as well. Let's get to the Roger comment. I don't get why so many people in this fan base so enamored with a running back. We aren't a running team. We're an outflank you type finesse offense. 16 to 18 spineless run guns is what we do.
I mean, I agree with that, right? 16 to 18 runs per game, not by your quarterback, by your running backs. Would you like B-Rob to be better? Would you like him to have better vision? Would you like him to be more explosive? Of course. But let's not forget the first half of the year last year. I think he had in the first half, I think he had 6 touchdowns in 8 games, something close to that.
Yeah,
he was doing exactly,
he was doing a good job.
Yeah, exactly what you needed him to do. He's not a difference maker. We all know that. When Austin Eckler's healthy and he's in there, he's actually a bit of a difference maker. He makes explosive plays all over when he's healthy. You can't count on him. So, yeah, this offense is not built to run the ball 30 times a game with your running backs. It's just not built that way. So why go out and spend that precious draft capital on that? So I agree totally with Roger here on this point.
Yeah. So to answer his question on why people are so enamored, one, Brian Robinson, while fans do love him, he is not dynamic.
No.
And last year was supposed to be a breakout year for him. It was not. Austin Eckler, fan favorite. People kept telling me, oh, he's a stud. He's a stud. When I said he was a very good player, not a stud, people argued with me.
I'll still argue with you.
He's a very good player. He is also an aging running back.
Right.
So what people are wanting to do that they see you have Terry McLaurin and now Deebo Samuel as wide receivers. You have difference makers in that position. You have a difference maker at QB. You don't have a difference maker at running back. And that is why they're targeting it. That's why the team, for the record, I mentioned John Keim says the team is looking at running backs. They want to add a running back. Where they add the running back is still up in the air, but the team wants to add a running back. All of it's because the production we're getting out of the running back room can be improved. We've said it time and time again here on Ref the District. The only position on this roster not upgradable is QB.
Sure. And left tackle, I think. I don't think there's a guy
sure. There. Okay. Now that we got Tunsil, and some might argue right guard Sam Cosme when healthy, you're not really going to find an upgrade for those positions. But outside of that, the whole team is ready and willing for an upgrade.
Yeah.
So running back, the improvement that you'll get from a running back, it's tough because the difference between the running back that's taken early in the second round and the running back that is taken in the late fourth,
right? There's not
a big difference. There's not a big difference between it. And so that's where it's rough for me. The positional value isn't there. To take a running back in the first round, you need a Saquon. You need a Derrick Henry.
You don't
Derrick
need
Henry wasn't even. I'm not saying Washington needs.
Yeah,
but I'm saying if you're using a first round pick, a team using a first round pick on a running back, the desire is to get a Derrick Henry. The desire is to get a Saquon Barkley. The desire is to get somebody who can carry the game if needed.
Well,
there's been a lot more misses in the first round of running backs than not. Right.
And also, Nathan, if you kind of look back in the history, and I have not done this research, but it would be great to kind of do a live research project. Gus is here. Gus is great at doing a little research. Go back to all the previous Super Bowl winners, and let's go through who their running back was. Now, obviously, last year's Saquon Barkley, and Saquon was amazing up until the Super Bowl. He didn't do much in the Super Bowl, but he certainly got them there. But go back and look at all the other Super Bowl winners in the last 10 years. How many of them had a top 5 running back? When you look at those teams, who is the running back for the Rams when they won the Super Bowl?
Isn't it Stevenson?
For the Rams? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Who's the running back for the Patriots? Who's the running back for the Chiefs? And they've had Edwards-Helaire, and they've had exactly
the 7th rounder. That's usually the one that we go to, is the fact that I can't remember his name. Pacquiao.
Yeah, Pacheco. Yeah,
Pacheco. There we go. Pacheco.
That's my point, is that normally running backs are not high draft picks who are going to lead your team to a Super Bowl. It's been proven. Now, there are certainly exceptions to that, and I'm not saying that every single one. But just go back and look at the history in the last 15 years when passing has become such a preferred method of offense, and you're just not going to see that many dynamic running backs winning Super Bowls as you used to back in the 80s and 90s.
Saquon Barkley with the Eagles is very much the exception, and not the rule, looking at the last 15 years of Super Bowls. Like,
I don't know. I'm not looking at, are you looking at the list of Super Bowl winners?
I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, I was just
in Locked on Law, this is what we're talking about here. Saquon Barkley's the exception. It's not case closed. Name another dynamic running back who won a Super Bowl in the last 2 decades.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely name all the quarterbacks, right? For sure, because it's Hall of Famers up and down every list. Even
Marshawn Lynch with Seahawks.
I'll give you that. Yeah. I'll give you Marshawn Lynch with the Seahawks. Absolutely. I mean, he's probably close to a Hall of Famer, but yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Adrian Peterson, one of the top 10 running backs of all time, couldn't win a ring playing on 15 teams.
Yeah. And look, we're not saying you don't want Adrian Peterson, but let's not use valuable draft capital on a running back when you do have more pressing needs. Now, one of the things you said, Nathan, and reminder to everybody, don't spoil the Caps score for me. Cam Akers, Leonard Fournette. I mean, this is the
Sony Michel, LeGarrette Blount, CJ Anderson, Percy Harvin. I mean, again, this proving the point here.
Yeah. But I lost my train of thought because that was such a fantastic point.
Yeah, thanks Gus Bus for doing that.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. I'll get it back.
Let's go with another Gus one, since he helped us out with the stats. The smartest move, Gus says, would be to draft an offensive lineman. Gary Z is his choice here, if available, and then draft a running back in the 3rd round that they don't have a pick in. No need to draft 1st round running back with a line featuring Wiley and Allegretti.
Yeah.
Putting the cart before the horse, he says later on. What do you think about making that move, bolstering the offensive line instead of getting a running back, and then allowing the running backs in the room, and then maybe a later drafted running back, explore with better blocking?
I'm tired of the Allegretti hate. I'm going to tell you right now, because I'm an Allegretti guy. I like him.
He's a believer, but he also believes Sam Howell was him. So, I mean, we got to take it with a grain of salt.
I got carried away. That was all for engagement. That was my bad on that. I definitely got carried away. But let's just say Allegretti is the guy that you hope he'll be. Well, Wiley's not going to be playing once Sam Cosmi comes back. Wiley's the guy who misses out, right? Because Brandon Coleman will be right tackle and Sam Cosmi will be right guard. So I don't know, if you draft a Gray Zabel, then I mean, you're kicking out Allegretti, and I don't see it, because although they didn't give him a lot of money, they signed him to a 3-year deal. You don't usually sign backups to 3-year deals, right? And they signed Allegretti to a 3-year deal.
Pretty sure they gave tight end 2 a 3-year deal.
Who, John Bates? Well, he's not really a backup. He might be tight end too, but he's not a backup. He plays 80-something% of the snaps.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call him backup, but usually don't. At least Adam Peters hasn't done that yet. The only 3-year deals he's given to are absolute starters, right? Guys like Luvu and Armstrong and guys like that. The 1-year deals are the guys they're not 100% sure. Anyway, that's the Allegretti point. But if you draft offensive linemen, you are basically saying, I don't believe in Allegretti. The point I was going to make about the drafting whoever, they're in a position to draft whoever, I kind of look at it a little bit differently, Nathan. I'm sorry that I'm going to say this, but when you say that you can basically draft anybody, I think that's kind of not a great thing. Because you're saying that there are a lot of spots where you're not completely satisfied in, right? So if you say you can draft an offensive lineman, then you got a problem at offensive line in the first round we're talking about. Mm-hmm. If you say you want to draft a corner, that means you got issues at corner. If you want a safety, all that. You can look at, there's a glass half full, glass half empty. I usually look at the glass half empty, and in this case, that's what I'm doing. If you're open to drafting anywhere, then that means you're not solid anywhere other than the quarterback position. That was the point I was trying to bring up earlier.
I feel like it's a good position that you're drafting on best player available and you're not focused on needs. I think that when you start focusing on needs, that's where you see some reaches. That's where you don't necessarily get to where you're going. Jersey, thanks for joining us tonight. LeGarrette Blount rushed for 90 yards for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's great. But if you're trying to sell me on LeGarrette Blount being an outstanding stud running back, you're going to completely miss me with that one. But he did have a good Super Bowl. We're not saying you can't have a good Super Bowl. Timmy Smith.
Yeah. We all remember Timmy Smith rushing for 200 yards for the Redskins.
It's a Super Bowl record.
Right. What is he? Well, he didn't lead. He wasn't the bell cow that got you to the Super Bowl. He just had a great Super Bowl.
Ellison, thanks for joining us tonight. The devaluing of running backs is nuts to me. It's like saying left guard doesn't matter either. They're all pieces to the puzzle. A lot of people with Ellison on this one. Running backs are coming back. They're Saquon and the King Henry are leading a renaissance of running backs being important for teams. I understand where people are coming from. We're still not there yet, though. We're still not at running backs have to be picked high. In fact, this particular running back group that we were looking at, you have Gente, who is an A bucket guy. Okay, he's going to get taken easily within the first round. Then you have a few guys. Hampton might be taken in the first round, but you have a bunch of B bucket guys, and then you got this huge bucket of C guys.
Yeah.
The difference between your B bucket running backs and your C bucket running backs is not significant enough when you're talking about positions and where you value them, as Ellison brought up. Mm-hmm. You take in positional value, and sorry, but a stud running back is lower than a lot of other stud positions. You have to rate. You can't have ones across the board, right? You gotta pick and choose where you put your ones, and teams aren't setting their roster up to have a one running back. They want their offensive linemen, as Stoner, mentioned, as Gus Bus mentioned, as Rogers mentioning, right? You build up that offensive line, and a running back that you pick in the 4th or 5th round is going to be a stud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And enough of a stud.
Yeah.
And the devaluing is not saying that they're not important to the team, that they're not a piece of the puzzle, of course. But like you said, Nathan, the positional value is just a lot less than these other positions. And you just don't want to spend the money / draft capital unless the guy is truly a game changer. And we just looked at all of these salaries and how GMs determine who's the most important on a team. Obviously is the quarterback. They average $55 million a year for the top 10. Running backs average $13 million a year in the top 10. the GMs devalue that position in relation to the other positions.
Yeah. Here's a good one from Locked on Law. Running backs. You know why running backs are bad first round picks? Their careers are usually shorter than their rookie contracts.
Yeah.
Not a lot of running backs getting second contracts, especially not on their team. Even the one that people are mentioning that won a Super Bowl, Saquon Barkley, didn't get his second contract with his team. He had to find that elsewhere. Washington set up to potentially take a running back. Stoner, last question before we move into the game here.
Yep.
Do you want a running back at 29?
Absolutely not. And don't spoil the cap score, please. No, I do not want a running back at 29. I don't want a running back in the first 2 days. So that would be whatever they end up with picks. I don't care if they end up with 14 picks in the first 2 rounds.
So
I don't
not
want
even with the 61st pick.
No.
Henderson is available at 61. You're not taking him.
I know it would be looked upon as being an idiot decision because he would be the best player available at 61.
I'm
not
looking for
doing
my worksheet on this one.
I'm not
Henderson really only actually 59 on the big board, but picked between 41 and 61 on average.
Yeah. You think does anybody here think that Tyler Shuck? Do you know who Tyler Shuck is? Shouk, Tyler Shuck. He's a quarterback for Louisville who played for, I believe, or was in college for, I believe, 7 years. He's going in day 1 or day 2. He might go in the first round, probably not, but he's probably going in the second, at worst, third round. Never heard of the dude until, draft season started, right? Because of his value is so incredibly high. And that's what happens. Like you said, Travion Henderson might be the 59th rated guy on the board, but he's going to go earlier just because there's not that many running backs or whatever, right?
Yeah, Henderson is definitely a B tier for me. Scatabo is one. JG was on earlier on the road, so not able to openly talk about. Very much hated Scatabo or Scatabo discussion. JG, big believer in Scatabo. I'm personally not.
No,
I'm a Henderson guy, but I would take him at 61, by the way.
You would take Henderson at 61.
Mm-hmm.
One more point on that, and I think Lockdown brought it earlier, and you popped it up there that we didn't really hit on too much. Look, this team gave up 55 points in the NFC Championship game. They've already addressed 2 important positions on the offense, which was 5th-ranked offense in the entire league. This offense averaged almost 30 points a game. The offense doesn't need help right now. You can, of course, add help. That's great. But the defense is what needs help. And they should use every single pick on a defender. That's my opinion.
Well, we will talk more about the NFL draft. In fact, Ryan Fowler from the Draft Network going to be joining us live here on episode 221. Stick with us. The game coming up right now on Ref the District. Welcome to the game here on episode 222 of Ref the District. Stoner and I waiting for Trev to come in. Ryan Fowler going to be joining us. He's from the Draft Network. Going to be talking all things NFL draft here. Stoner asking, do not spoil the Caps score. Of course, we stream live every Wednesday here on YouTube and Facebook. Make sure you're hitting that like button for us. Make sure you've subbed up and make sure you're sharing so other people can join us. Scooby from across the pond is here. Trey in the house coming from Central Florida. We'll welcome you guys in here. Appreciate you joining us. Stoner, before the break, saying defense all the way across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Popular pick. Both of us saying that the defensive backfield are going to get some help. You specifically think it's going to be a cornerback.
Yeah, I do.
Well, John Keim agreeing with you. Hairston was his pick.
Yeah. Depends on who's available at that point. But yeah, I think they need to go corner. Let's just Marshawn Lattimore right? He's a little bit fragile over the last couple of years. Everybody agrees with that, right? What happens? What happens if Marshawn Lattimore gets hurt? Who are your two outside corners? Because Mikey is better in the slot and Jonathan Jones is better in the slot. Who are your two outside corners if Lattimore goes down? Igbenogany and Mikey? That's who you want? That's not a great plan to me. They need a stud corner. That's who they should pick with their first rounder or with their second rounder. Of course, depends on who's there, how the board goes, all that. And they've got to go edge because Dietrich Wise is their starting edge along with Dorrance Armstrong.
Oof.
Is that scaring any quarterbacks? Is that scaring any offensive line coaches? They're not shaking in their boots over Dietrich Wise and
you're not doing a lot of mass protect, that's for sure. That's
man.
So on the outside, on the cornerback thing, it's interesting that they have, I think, 3 guys that are versatile.
Mm-hmm.
And that's currently your CBs 2 through 4, the ones that you mentioned, Iggy, Jones, and Mikey, all could play the slot, have played the outside, and can play the outside to a varying degree of success.
Mm-hmm.
Iggy hoping to continue having a career renaissance here. Jones more on the twilight of his career, and Mikey just starting to blossom, but did very well on the outside for Washington. In fact, the team talked about Mikey being on the outside and saying it wasn't ideal, but once he showed that he can play there, they were happy with it, but they would like to see him move in. So it's definitely likely that they take a cornerback early in the rounds. Now, whether or not they take one with 29, I do think it matters on who is there. Lots of people loving the edge rusher that's named to us. I think someone had mentioned it before. I know we got Trey Amos here from Trey himself, Mad Max, the Hairston, the one there. Safety is another one for Iman Ware as an option. But someone
Izaraku.
Izaraku. That's the name I couldn't come up with it, so I appreciate it. Izaraku as an option there. Mike Green is another one, edge rusher. Lots to kind of come out there in 29. I'm looking forward to when Ryan joins us, just because he's really going to have some in-depth analysis on those particular players.
Yeah.
Would you be upset then, Stoner, if they don't go defense with that first pick? What if they do pick up a Greg Zabel
or Gray Zabel?
Gray Zabel.
Yeah. Look, I'll be honest. I will be upset. Obviously, they know way more about these guys, and they know way more about drafting, and they know way more about their roster management than I do. But just from the outside and understanding this team and knowing what I feel that they need, yeah, I would be upset if they took a guard or a center, which is what Zabel is. He's a guard and center. I would be upset if they took a defensive tackle. I saw somebody mock draft had him taking the defensive tackle. I'm going to throw something at my screen if they do that.
Defensive tackle might be a hard push for me too. That one would be, that'd be a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if they took a tight end. Yeah. I don't care if, what's the kid from Penn State who I haven't studied again because he's not going to be anywhere available. But let's say something comes out and he has some sort of issue on draft day, a little Laramie Tunsil.
Abdul Carter?
Well, the tight end from Penn State. Warren.
Coleman or Capperman.
Tyler Warren. And if Tyler Warren is available at 29 and he's tight end 1, I don't want to take him. No, I'm sorry. You have to. It's just like Johnny Newton last year. I thought they should have passed on Johnny Newton last year, but they didn't. And everybody's telling me he's the second coming of Ndamukong Suh or something. I don't know what's going on there, but I can't do that when I'm drafting. So yeah, if they draft an offensive lineman or anywhere on offense, I'm going to be really upset. But 2 weeks later, Nathan, I'll fall in love with the guy. That's how it happens, right?
It's not even going to take 2 weeks for me.
Probably not even that
my deal. I will always find justification the day after. I might be in shock the day of.
Yeah.
Loveland was the one I was thinking.
From
Grimjaw
Michigan.
mentioning, Grimjaw saying Loveland is a dog. I would not hate it.
Where's he going to play? Where is Colton Loveland going to play?
Apparently, tight end
John
one.
Bates, Zach Ertz, and you spent a second rounder on Ben Sinnott last year.
Yep.
And the Raiders did it, right? They Brock Bowers and the kid from Notre Dame, his name's escaping me as well, Michaels Meyer, right? They drafted tight ends early 2 years in a row, but I think that's idiotic. So they did the best player available, and they won like 5 games last year. So there.
It is going to be interesting. Now, Stoner, you went through the history.
Yep.
Of pick 29.
Yep.
The Commanders actually had a fantastic article on this as well from Zach Selby.
Yeah.
But no offense to Zach, we're going to trust your insights on this one. Could you walk us back through those players who have been picked at 29? I've got a history lesson on how often it's been traded. That's going to come after Ryan joins us. So
that's cool. Yeah. And get your questions ready for Ryan as well.
Ryan,
we'll try and get some of your questions that you have for him as well. It was really interesting to go back and look at every pick for the last 15 years, the last 15 picks at number 29. And here's just some of what I found. And this is not sort of a deep, and I'm not going to go through every guy, right? This is not deep research, but just some interesting thoughts. The 5th year option became available in the year 2011. Okay. Up until now, of course, right now, the only 5th year options are the guys who were drafted in 2022. So that's 10 years of the 5th year option being available. I don't know why I said 10 years, 12 years of the 5th year option being available. And the 29th pick has gotten a 5th year option 3 times out of 12. That's it. 25% have gotten their 5th year option picked up, i.e., people don't like their picks at 29 well enough to give them that extra year. And I'm looking through some of these guys who are drafted. The only 3 guys, by the way, were this year, Cole Strange for the Patriots got his 5th year option picked up. And I don't think nobody's beating down the door to try to get Cole Strange. I mean, I think he was hurt pretty much all last year. But he got his 5th year option picked up. In 2017, David Njoku was the Cleveland Browns draft pick, the tight end, stud, right? They picked up his 5th year option, and then they eventually signed him to a long-term deal. Good for them. And then you got to go all the way back to 2012 for the Vikings. Harrison Smith, the safety from Notre Dame. They picked up his 5th year option. And in fact, he's still on their team, having signed again this past offseason for 1 year and $10+ million. That's it. Nobody else has had their 5th year option picked up. You ever heard of Tavon Bryan? He was the 29th pick in 2018 for Jacksonville. Defensive tackle out of Florida. He's on his 3rd team already. You ever heard of Robert? I used to know how to say his name.
Butcher it like the rest of us. It's not rest of the district if we don't.
I think it is, right? He was a defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. And he had a lot of questions about him. He had top 10 pick talent, but there was a lot of questions about him. This was in 2016. He's played in the USFL and CFL the last couple of years.
Oof.
Right? And just recently, when you look at Tennessee, took an offensive tackle out of Georgia named Isaiah Wilson in 2020. He's not even in the league. In 2020, they took an offensive tackle out of Georgia at pick number 29. Dude ain't even in the league. That was 5 years ago. Think about that for a second. He played for 2 years. 2. Lower your expectations on pick number 29 is what I'm telling you. There are almost no names on here that you would recognize other than Cordero Patterson, who's still in the league, is still a good player, but he was drafted by Minnesota with pick 29 way back in 2013, but they didn't even pick up his 5th-year option, and he was gone.
Yeah. And there's an argument, Tommy, thanks for joining here. Lamar Jackson was picked with the 32nd pick. That's all fair and dandy. We know that you can look across the board and you can find studs at every draft position, even 29.
Yeah.
You have to go back quite a bit to find a stud at pick 29, but it happens. You can get them anywhere, and it is important to find the guy that's going to fit on the right, on your team and everything like that. Now, part of that is I want to, you hate the Allegretti hate.
Mm-hmm.
The Johnny Newton slander is the one that I cannot.
You can't handle the hate.
Back this one. All right, Gus here. You're right about Johnny Newton, Stoner. Stoner is famously not on Johnny Newton's side. Fisk and Sweat were drafted immediately after Newton and had better years. First off, both play different positions. And secondly, Sweat as a nose tackle, to me, I don't see him having better years when he actually had less sacks, less tackles for loss, less like QB hits and everything. Gonna miss me with the Johnny Newton hate, everybody. Miss me with that one.
And let me be clear, I'm not blown away by what Johnny Newton did last year. He did fine, right? But I was just upset that you had just picked up or you had just signed Deron Payne to a long-term deal. You had Jonathan Allen. It was not a position of need. And I'm a position of need guy.
You are a need drafter.
Right. So I would not have taken a defensive tackle. I don't care if it was Johnny Newton, who had a high first-round grade. I just wouldn't do it because I didn't need a defensive tackle. I understand that. So right down the road, they went ahead and got rid of Jonathan Allen, and that was probably the plan all along. I get that part, but it was still just not a position that I felt they should have gone after. Obviously, when you look back on the year that they had, they needed a corner. They needed an edge. They needed a lot of different positions, and they went with something where they had 3 solid guys, if you consider Fedarian Mathis at the time as well.
Well, it's interesting then that you mentioned that. And maybe it's the difference between the two positions because Stoner, you're so into grabbing a cornerback with that pick at 29.
Yeah, I am.
They have 3 solid guys. If Lattimore stays healthy, you can play Mikey on the outside, Jones or Iggy on the inside.
Yeah. That's fine.
Is that not a luxury? Like I don't see how one is being seen as a bad pick and a luxury when a guy is clearly the best player available at that pick.
Well, okay, but you're talking about Sanistril and Lattimore as a couple of guys who you hope are going to be here for the next 3 years.
Sure.
Or at least 2 years in Lattimore's case. So you've got those guys under contract, but you've got Jones on a 1-year deal, and he's been around for 100 years or 12 years, I think he is, maybe year 12. So that to me says need. Obviously, they were looking well past this past season when they were drafting last year, and they saw that Fedarian Mathis was not the guy. And they saw that they were probably going to get rid of Jonathan Allen for contract or for whatever reason. And so they needed a D tackle. But at that time, you were looking at 3 defensive tackles, starting defensive tackles on your team. and it was a team that had trouble defensively, and I felt that they could have used that draft capital elsewhere.
All right. Well, you are a needs drafter. I'm a best player available drafter. Let's find out where Ryan Fowler of the Draft Network, where he stands on the situation. Let's welcome to the channel, Ryan. We appreciate you joining us again this draft season. Know it's really busy for you. Who are you liking in this draft that you don't hear other people involved in drafting talking about enough?
Yeah, of course. First things first, guys. Go Caps. First things first. And
don't say anything.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything. But appreciate you guys having me on, man. Excited to get this thing going here tomorrow night. Where I'm at, as far as the 29 with Washington, I wouldn't be surprised they trade back guys as of now, adding more capital. I think for me though, if they do stay, it's defensive. I gotta get an edge rusher. Got to get a pass rusher in the building right now. I know there's some attention at receiver, some attention with Trevion Henderson at running back potentially. There's attention in those spots, but I think defense will really be the focus. But I think to your question, I think guys that I really do like that maybe aren't talked about a bunch. I think one guy that really pops in my mind, Nick Martin, linebacker from Oklahoma State, probably a guy that doesn't get out of day two. Very impressive athlete and someone that when he's healthy, I think he is really arguably the premier linebacker, off-ball backer alongside Carson Schlesinger in this class from UCLA. So that's really one guy that pops to my head as far as just really one player that I really do like that maybe he's not getting enough attention.
Let's get into – oh, sorry, Nathan.
No, go ahead, Stan. I was just going to say that that's interesting. Somebody had mentioned earlier, one of our viewers, that they would prefer to grab the top linebackers rather than the fifth or sixth best defensive end. So I know we all know edge rush is a need for this team, but maybe grabbing – one of the higher, linebackers, and then might be a better option for the team.
We'll see. I think at this position right now where Washington is, I know Bobby Wagner's, not 25 years old anymore, but what Frankie Louvu does and what they really expect from a guy like Jordan McGee and even a hybrid piece like Dom Hampton, what he's going to be for this defense, I expect him to be in year two moving forward. I wouldn't say that a linebacker is definitely a priority as of right now.
Ryan, let's focus on the edge position if we can with a couple of these guys who we kind of expect to be available around 29, assuming they don't trade back. One guy that is interesting to me in terms of what seems to be going on with his draft position is James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, right? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, we're starting to hear some stuff about him, some character issues, or it just seems like his stock seems to be dropping. You think that's real, or is that sort of somebody putting some stuff out there hoping he'll drop to them?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important when it comes to character concerns this time of year, guys, where you're getting that information from. Because for me personally, when I try to judge character of a guy, that can be a very sensitive type of topic to where, if you're putting stuff out there on certain players and you have that platform to do so, you can get some buzz on some guys in a negative way and ultimately hurt these guys and allow them to potentially lose millions of dollars when it's not necessary. For me with James Pierce, I've heard some good things. I've heard some bad things, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I know James Pierce personally. I do not. I know Mike Green. I've had some conversations with him throughout this pre-draft process, seeing him down at the Senior Bowl and talking to him as well. Everything from my thought process is, look, he's a hell of a young man. But with James specifically, I don't see him as a Washington Commander, specifically who he is behind the scenes is all I'll say. Now, the football player is a hell of a young man, and there are some concerns as far as an early downs, but the ceiling of James Pierce Jr. as a football player is arguably, in my opinion, as lofty as any edge rusher in this class as far as what he can be as a sack artist at the NFL level. So I don't think he is the guy for the Commanders. I don't think we see his name come off the board on Thursday night. But as far as who he could be if everything comes to fruition and that metaphorical light bulb takes off in his head, he could be a hell of a young man, a hell of a young player for a long time.
Wow. That not being a day one pick would be, I think, a bit of a shock for where a lot of people expect him, but maybe some of those character concerns do come in. And I think that's where the interviews are important.
Yes.
Adam Peters last year, the entire draft class, they did speak with all of them. Maybe not necessarily in the 30 visits that they brought in for Top Golf or one of those quote unquote top 30 visits, but every single one they did an interview with. Is there somebody that they've interviewed that has stood out to you as maybe a day 3 selection Washington fans should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I think one guy that hasn't got a lot of attention, potentially in the safety bucket, is a Jonas Sanker from Virginia. He is really, for me, one of the players that, look, you just want a flat out tackler that flies downhill and can potentially be a core four special teamer for you right now. Because, guys, look, there's a lot of attention that goes in the top 50 guys, top 60, top 70, but these are the types of players that help you win Super Bowls, bottom line. And you need players that can do a variety of things in multiple facets of the game. And with Jonas and his ability to play all three levels at Virginia, one of the smartest individuals I've gotten to know in this pre-draft process, just to come in, and maybe there's some limitations as far as an athlete, or not going to be that single high type of safety that roams number to number that you see maybe a Malachi Starks, the higher portions of the class, or a Kyle Hamilton in today's day and age. But there also has to be an appreciation, guys, for those flat out really good football players. And I think Jonas Sanker is that type of guy. So in that day 3 bucket where I expect him to be, a guy that's received a lot of interest in this pre-draft process, one of my personal favorites in the class at the safety position is Jonas Sanker from UVA.
Wow, that's an interesting one. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on him. Ryan, you've got kind of the I hope you take this as a compliment. You have the Mel Kiper brain, right? You've got all this stuff up here with all these guys, and you can just kind of rattle off good and bad about each of these. But what I'm wondering is, having done this for a few years, who's a guy that you look back on where you said, that guy I thought was going to be a stud and he just didn't turn out? And then vice versa, who's a guy that you said, well, I don't like this guy, and then he turns out to be a stud?
Yeah, I'm going to go way back with this.
Right.
I loved E.J. Bibbs, a tight end that came out of Iowa State. Oh, my gosh, this was a while ago,
Yeah.
long time ago. Just
Yeah,
loved the way
look
he
him up.
moved, loved the potential versatility in his game. Didn't do anything at the NFL level. I really liked his game. Now, on the flip side of that, a guy I preached for a long time, just a few years ago, it was Tank Dell, the receiver out of Houston. And people said he was too small, he was too skinny, he can't run routes, this and this, this and this. Well, when he's healthy, and hopefully Tank gets healthy here soon, he's a hell of a playmaker on the outside for anybody in football. So Tank Dell's really my guy that I really preached for, pounded the table for, if you will, that's really turned out. And then a while ago, looking at a guy like E.J. Bibbs, or even a Greg Rousseau as well. Wasn't a big fan of Greg Rousseau coming out of Miami and what he's been for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, he has been very good for Buffalo. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of, you even mentioned it, trading back is an option for Washington. It's something that I'm sure Adam Peters is going to be active on the phones about. He had a joke about if Abdul Carter falls to 29, you of course take that pick. Who is a player Washington is hoping, Adam Peters is hoping, falls to 29 because they know those phones are going to be ringing off the hook?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one thing is they're in a great spot for people to even come in from the early second round to grab a quarterback. Whether even Shadur Sanders is on the board, if it's a Jackson Dart, if it's a Jalen Milroe, one of those players. I know there's a lot of attention, guys, right now with a Tyler Shuck from Louisville potentially getting his name into tomorrow night, which would be a bit of a surprise, even though I like the kid. I just think with Washington right now, they're in a good spot. They're at 29. But I think if they're sitting there and they see a potentially a Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, I know that 29 seems a little bit low, but he continues to slip down boards because his foot injury is a major concern, a major medical red flag for teams right now. So I think if that's a name that maybe slips down there, as a Shamar Stewart as well, I think they potentially take a guy like Shamar. I really like Shamar's game. There's been a ton of context as far as what he did this year at A&M, what he was asked to do as a 4i. Disruption is production in my book, and in every sense of the word. And for someone at A&M like him, to where you ask him to pin his ears back at the next level, like we saw his teammate, his running mate, Nick Scourton last year at Purdue, you may have a sensational type of football player. And one thing, guys, I really enjoyed with Shamar this year, seeing him live at the Senior Bowl in a neutral environment, an alternate setting, in that environment where the lights are a little bit brighter, winning in isolation. Will you step up and will you make yourself some money in front of all 32 teams? And Shamar Stewart, seeing how that young man is built, the explosiveness at 280 plus pounds, the versatility that he has, that's someone that you can really bet on. And for me, why he's a top 10 player in the class.
Man, you got me. You got my brain off track when you mentioned Will Johnson possibly being there at 29 because of him falling. I love me a lot of Will Johnson, but we'll see. The medical issues are not something that us on our end have a lot of privy to, so that makes sense if he does have some medical issues. But let's talk a little bit about the cornerback room if we can, because that for me is also a major position for Washington that they should be looking at. Guys who may be there in that late first, early second, late second, depending on what they do with their picks. Who do you like if they're going to be there? Obviously, you're not going to have the Travis Hunters or those guys up at the top. But when we did our cornerback show a couple weeks ago, we didn't even talk about Will Johnson because we didn't think there was a chance he would be there. But who are some of those guys you think might be there for Washington?
Yeah, I sure hope for Will's perspective he's not there at 29, guys. I'm with you. He's a hell of a ball player, and he can flat out play. And I don't think he gets to 29, but just as far as we've seen crazier things happen in night one of the draft. I think at 29, it's going to be a little bit of a flavor of the month type of feel for what you want as far as man-specific and an Azariah Thomas, more press man type of corner. Do you want a guy that plays 7 yards off like a Trey Amos from Ole Miss? One of my favorites, though, in the class that has had some prospect fatigue on his game, that as you move into the middle parts of the first round, back into the first round, where Washington is at 29, if they want to sit there and say, we want a potential CB1 on this roster, and I think, honestly, guys, if they drafted this kid moving into this year where you have Sandra Steele, Lattimore, Igbenogany, and Jonathan Jones, potentially to be CB1, that's Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. I'm still very, very high on Benjamin, even though he missed most of the year. Watching this kid at Notre Dame in his first really 2.5 seasons, he can potentially shut down a third of the side of the field for you. And I remember talking to a few scouts last year where they head up to South Bend. It was Cam Hart on one side, Benjamin Morrison on the other. And last year specifically, of course, with Benjamin as a sophomore, it was Cam Hart, he's a stud. He's going to probably be a top 100 guy. He wasn't. He went in the 5th round of the Chargers. But Benjamin Morrison is a flat-out stud. So a healthy Morrison is a CB1 every single day of the week for me at the NFL level. And if Washington wants to add a man in zone-specific type of corner that can really do it all and take the ball away as well with excellent footwork and eyes and mirroring those two things, Benjamin Morrison is a guy for me at 29.
Nice.
Wow, that's a bit shocking. Mainly, we've run a few mock drafts on the public board, and Morrison is there available at 61.
Yeah.
And our viewers not high on Morrison, which is interesting, even though we've taken him pretty much every time that we didn't take a CB in the first one. I know Hairston was John Kime's pick. Let's stick with 61, though, because I know a lot of focus is going to be, on that pick 29. Washington might not even be drafting the first day. Second round, is where my kind of focus is, because I do expect to have a couple more picks in that second round when things come around for Friday. Who are some of the guys in the second round that Washington could potentially get to bolster this roster?
Yeah, I think real quick at corner, a couple names: Quincy Riley from Louisville, Dorian Strong as well from Virginia Tech are probably two names I would say right now. At running back, potentially that's a spot. What I really do like about the running back class, guys, is there's a lot of varying body types. You can have your bigger, more physical guys like an Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez, or Cam Scatterboot from Arizona State, or even a DJ Giddens as well from Kansas State. Or you could have your smaller, shiftier, 3-down type of backs as far as in space with a guy like Brashard Smith, one of my favorites in this class from SMU, or LaQuinn Allen from Syracuse, or a guy that's built similarly to a Austin Eckler with the physical, more upper half in his body, is an RJ Harvey from Central Florida that I absolutely love there on day 2. So that's a couple of the positions there. Maybe a safety is Kevin Winston from Penn State there. I don't know if he gets to 61. He's one of my favorite safeties in the class. Is Xavier Watts from Notre Dame. He's the only 2-time consensus All-American the last 2 years other than Travis Hunter. It's just Watts and Travis, and he gets no attention for that notoriety. So those are just a couple players and a couple positions. I don't think they're adding offensive line that early. I think they're okay there. Maybe they add late on day 3 for a developmental type of player, but really running back, maybe safety. Maybe they want to go with a bigger type of receiver in that bucket. Do they really like a Pat Bryant from Illinois, or late as far as a Daquan Felton from Virginia Tech, who transferred in from Norfolk State? Isaiah Nair is a kid at Nebraska, former Texas, former Wyoming transfer. Or they could just say, hey, look, we love the traits and tools of a 6'5", 4'3" runner and Dante Thornton Jr. from Tennessee, and we want to provide that verticality on the outside. So there's a couple positions there on day 2 and day 3.
What the heck is going on with that Dante Thompson? Like you said, 6'5" and runs a 4'3". How the heck is he not a first rounder?
Yeah, when you look at those guys, you ask that question, right? How is this guy not a first round pick? For me, it's the nuances in his game. Too much of standing straight up at the line of scrimmage, allowing these more physical, longer corners at the SEC level to get into his chest. You got to be able to get off the line of scrimmage at the NFL level, where you can have guys that run 4.3 that also have 33s for arms. So those are little smaller nuances. The working over the middle of the field. I can see him going over the top and being a 3-level threat, or also be a guy that's taking these designated touches at the line of scrimmage. But will you work over the middle of the field? I have that same concern with Tator McMillan. I have that same concern with Trey Harris as well from Ole Miss. So those are the little things in his game to where you do ask that. And I had the same questions of a similar guy from the SEC a few years ago. If you guys remember the name of Matt Landers from Arkansas, big, ran 4.3, and unfortunately has not worked out at the NFL level.
I don't know. Rookie year, he might just need to go deep every single time. Let Terry McLaurin and Debo Samuel work the underneath and over the middle. One of the things we've talked about is Washington. Adam Peters has kind of set up this roster so that way they are open to taking the best player available. QB is the only position that doesn't really need an upgrade. Left tackle with Tunsil and Sam Cosmi at right guard, probably also not upgradable, but every other position is a big upgrade. What do you see as Washington's biggest need outside of the two obvious ones you touched on already? Edge and corner seem to be the two biggest needs and what most people are mocking to them here in the first round. But outside of those two, what's the third biggest need, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, for me right now, it is that free safety, having a guy that could roam potentially number to number. I like Quan Martin when he could offer. Will Harris is going to play downhill. I don't know if Percy Butler is a player for the future. Dom Hampton's going to be a hybrid second-level defender, so potentially having that guy with some tools and traits to roam hash to hash or number to number is potentially a need there. I think also guys running back, you got to get a guy in the building that – look, I like Brian Robinson. I really do. I like Austin Eckler, McNichols, Chris Rodriguez. I like all these guys. But there's not a guy in the building right now that I see that consistently create on his own alleys, his own ways up front if the offensive line isn't perfect. Now, they don't need to be perfect. And we saw times last year when all of those guys had certain impacts in certain ball games when the front five was really pushing some bodies up front. But getting a guy with some fresh juice in the building. And I think also, guys, this goes for all 32 teams. I don't care if you're the Eagles with Barkley, the Colts with Jonathan Taylor, or the damn Ravens with Derrick Henry in his final year of his contract. Similarly to all the guys in Washington right now in the last year of their contract, I still think a lot of teams are going to add a guy just because how deep this class is to get an individual in the building to provide some fresh juice and to provide some competition, which never hurts. And there's a lot of different players on all 3 days that are going to come off the board.
Amazing stuff that you do, Ryan, how you've got all that information up there. I could talk to you literally for hours about all this stuff, but I know we're limited on time. So my last question for you is, you're a Commanders fan.
Yeah.
You know this, right? What pick over the years has made you almost break your TV?
Oh, man.
When you saw it. What's the one where you said, I can't believe they
Stoner's on like TV number 5. So he's got a lot of recent.
I've broken a few. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's a great question. I could say Jamin Davis because I was very high on Christian Darrisaw in that same draft. I really like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in that same draft. Emmanuel Forbes over Christian Gonzalez was I know we'll never forget that. Yeah. So I would say those two most recently, which is terrible because how many picks in the last 4 or 5 years in the Ravon Rivera regime, we just set the team back year after year after year. So I would say Jamin Davis, not because it didn't work out either. I'm not going to say that. But those picks at the time, I thought there were better players on the board to fill immediate needs and to really contribute right away with the Darrisaws of the world and what we've seen Gonzalez, both those guys really progress into the NFL.
Yeah, I really thought Davis was going to have a chance to turn it around with the new regime and kind of test out this edge rushing, use that speed that he had. Didn't work out this time, but we'll see where we go with this one. One of the things that Adam Peters focuses on is that athleticism, though. Who is an athlete that Washington fans should get to know, because there's going to be a name that Adam Peters pulls out that we're not going to talk about, but it's going to be a guy who has the measurables that Adam Peters is looking for.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think the number one guy in this class, when you think about big, fast, strong, long, Herculean athletic profile, that is Nick Emanwuri. from South Carolina. I will say this: he scares the bleep out of me as a football player. There's too much of searching around in coverage, not understanding what he's doing. So I think marrying the ability as an athlete and a football player, when you can do that, you get the Travis Hunters, you get the Abdul Carters, the Mason Grahams, the Ashton Genties of the world. With Nick Amenwari, I still need finer nuances in your ability as a ball player. When you're strapped up on Sundays, you can't just win because of athleticism at the highest level of the game. But I think there's two guys. I want to talk about later guys and the later rounds, because that's where Adam Peters, you really flex your muscles as a scouting staff. One name to know is Brandon George. He's a linebacker from Pittsburgh. I don't know exactly what he's going to be at the NFL level. There's been a ton of talks. He's potentially moving to edge, but the guy's 6'2", 245 pounds, ran low 4.4s, jumped 43 to 44 inches in the vert, is extremely explosive and outstanding athletic profile, and also a hell of a young man as well. So Brandon George, the linebacker from Pitt, and then I'll say a guy in the late 7th round, potential priority UDFA bucket, is quarterback Tommy Mellott from Montana State. He is somebody that won the Walter Payton Award this year at the FCS level, which is the Heisman equivalent at the FCS. 46 touchdowns, 6'2", 225, ran high 4.3s, can also jump out of the gym. Extremely versatile player. You don't bring him in to challenge Jaden Daniels or Marcus Mariota. I'm not saying that, but he's an immense type of athletic profile that has that Taysom Hill type of versatility as far as talks with teams right now, potentially come in and be that type of versatile offensive piece. So Tommy Mellott from Montana State.
Is he a runner also?
He is, yes.
I was about to say, because I can only imagine the hair that we pulled out from Washington fans if they see a QB drafted in the 7th round.
No, it will not happen. It will not happen.
That would be wild. Yeah, maybe that undrafted free agent. Well, Ryan, we appreciate you jumping on here with Ref the District. Lots of great insight. Definitely going to keep those names on our minds these next 3 days. We know you got a busy week ahead of you, so we appreciate you jumping on with us tonight.
Of course. Thanks as always, guys. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Ryan, very much.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Ryan Fowler from the Draft Network. Appreciate you again. Fantastic stuff. I love having him on. So many good names and insights for us to kind of look at. And I really like, I'm going to be thinking about those names the next 3 nights, like all the ones that he mentioned, especially the back end guys, because there's just too many people to kind of think about. So him having that knowledge, I think, is fantastic.
Yeah, always enjoy having him on, and it helps for me that he is a Commanders fan and that he's local and that he really, I know he does have Mel Kiper's brain, right? He knows every single player in this draft from memory and can do their measurables and their RAS scores and all of the plays that they made and didn't make, their strengths and weaknesses. So having him come on and talk about that, and specifically how it relates to Washington, because he is a fan, love it. Love having him on every single year.
If you loved having him on, make sure you hit that like button for us. Make sure you sub to the channel. Make sure that you're sharing with people that Ryan did some good work and came out here on Ref the District. Now, Stoner, you shared with us earlier the names picked at 29.
Yeah.
And how they're a little bit lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan mentioned it. Several others talking about it. We're kind of hoping for it. Washington trading that 29th pick. I have the deets on that for the last 21 years, at least, is what I went back.
Excellent.
Let's start with last year. Last year, the 29th pick was traded. It was a move up. However, the 29th pick and the 73rd pick traded for the 24th pick and a next year 7th.
Okay, so all right, so whoever had the 29th pick,
Detroit
traded up to 24,
mm-hmm.
and they gave up basically the 73rd and the 29th. Yep. Right? Okay. So and then the Cowboys had the 29th pick, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's 1 year. That's just 1 year back. We're already seeing action. 2 years back, we're seeing action. San Francisco to Minnesota first traded it for picks. It was a pick swap. Not even going to get into it because then or sorry, not Minnesota, Miami. Miami then traded that pick to Denver for Chubb. And Denver traded that pick to New Orleans for the rights to Sean Payton.
Oh, wow. Right.
Crazy.
Wow. That was
right?
the first round pick that they gave up.
Yeah.
Huh?
So remember
Okay.
San Francisco to Miami, that was the move up for Trey Lance.
Okay.
Okay. Then Miami parlayed that into Chubb, and then Denver got Sean Payton out of that one. You're going to see pick 29 again, San Francisco to Miami, the Trey Lance pick. Miami then trades that to Kansas City for Tyreek Hill. Kansas City then moved up from 29 to New England's 21st pick. That was in 22.
So, and then New England ended up using that on the Cole Strange that nobody had ever heard of. He was a tackle or a guard, offensive lineman. I think he was a guard out of Tennessee, Chattanooga, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Guyton was the pick for Dallas there, as
Yes.
you mentioned, and Grimjaw talking about here.
And for New Orleans 2 years ago, it was Brian Barisi. He's actually a local kid who went the defensive tackle from Clemson. And I think he's a stud. He's played 2 years. Anyway, so you're saying that the last 3 years,
that pick has
29th has been all over the place.
Yeah.
Nobody likes the 29th pick.
No one likes it, and it continues, but now in 2019 is the next year that I've got listed here. Kansas City trades the 29th and 92nd pick and some additional things to Seattle for Frank Clark and a third.
Okay.
So a player swap. I know we're all kind of thinking about 29th picks, and moving in and getting some more picks. Adam Peters has been moving draft picks for people. So
all right. So let me ask you this. So far in the last 6 years, the 29th pick has been traded 3 times, right? Or is it 4 times?
24, 23rd, 22nd, and the 19th. It's been moved.
Yeah. So, but all of those times, teams moved up from 29, correct? Not somebody who came from the second round.
Yeah.
And
Detroit moved up. Yeah. Detroit moved up. Denver traded it for a coach. Kansas City moved up.
Yeah.
And Kansas City moved it for a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all right. So,
two acquisitions, and more if you consider Chubb and Hill as a part of that action. I'm just going over the final one, but no one so far in the last 6 years has traded back from 29. Yeah. That is going to change.
Okay. All right.
In 2017.
All right.
Okay. This is where it finally gets into what we're looking at. All right. 2017. Green Bay had the 29th pick. They turned that into the 33rd and 108 picks.
Wow, 33rd and what is 108?
That is round, early fourth round. Could be looked at as a late third, depending on how many comp picks were given out. Got to remember, pick 100 last year was the last comp pick, and of course that went to us.
Would you trade the 29th for 33 and 108? Right? Because that's what they did in 2017.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at my little trade board, I mean, that's kind of what you're looking at. Is you're looking at trading for a second and a fourth is good value, and that's an early fourth and an early second. I mean, you're only moving back 4 spots.
Yeah, that's interesting. That you would consider that. I mean, 108 and 30. Move back 4 spots, and you get the 108th pick.
Yeah, you get a fourth rounder for moving back 4 spots. Trey saying not for 108, maybe 99th. Brian saying, "Hey, if we get our guy at 33, I'd do it."
Sure,
if you know it, right? If you know it's going to work out.
And by the way, that's
kind of worth it, but I honestly prefer a pick for next year. I am not trading this year's first for
next year's.
I'm okay if next year is a part of the package, but no less than 2 picks this year.
So 33rd, 108th, and next year's.
If it's not 108, because
162
the math has to happen, right? Like, so
Sure.
if it's not a second and a fourth, maybe it is like a second, a fifth, and a next year's third. But it has to be 2 picks this year.
Okay. So, by the way, when Cleveland moved up to the 29th pick that year in 2017, that's when they picked David Njoku. So they moved up for Njoku. And I may never say this again the rest of my life. Cleveland made a very good decision moving up for Njoku.
Yeah, it worked.
Lockdown says no way, 33 and 108.
Yeah. A lot of people not liking that one.
Before you move on, when Washington moved out of the second round, their second round pick last year with Philadelphia, remember they moved back and they ended up taking Sanastril, and then they got another second rounder though.
They got 2 second rounders. They got the 51st and 55th. Somebody correct me on the numbers. They were 2 in the 50s.
And they moved out of like 42 or something.
Yeah, and they moved out of 42, but they also gave up they gave up other picks. So they got 2 seconds for trading their second, but it was because they are also trading other resources.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Cool.
This year, so that was the 33rd and the 108 in 2017. So looking at my draft board nonsense that I got going for me for this year, the 33 pick is held by Cleveland, and it would be Cleveland giving up 33 and 104.
Okay, so
it would be very, very close to what happened in 2017. And 2013 is the next time the pick. So 4 years gap between this. This is another move back situation. This one, I think that people will like maybe a little less.
Oh, you had me getting,
I was going to go
excited, right?
All right. More picks.
Yeah.
However, New England traded away their 29th pick to get the 52nd pick, the 83rd pick, the first or second, and 229. So they were able to get 4 picks out of it, but they got a late second, early mid third, possibly a late third or early fourth, and then a 7th rounder.
All right, give me those numbers again. So they gave up the 29th and they got 51,
52,
52. What are the other ones?
52, 83, 102, and 229.
I'd do that.
You'd do that? Do you like that better than the trade for the 33 and 108?
Yes, I do. I like those extra guys. And I know some people are like, extra picks doesn't necessarily mean more talent that you're bringing in. You can bring in 6 guys, but if none of them can play, what is it? What good is it? But those are right in the middle, right? Those are right, as you said, that it's a late second and then a third or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You're getting some quality draft picks in there. I would do that one.
Interesting. I think I prefer moving back 4 spots rather than moving back from 29 to 52 is a big jump back. I mean, that's also why you're getting another pick in the top 100 with 83, one just outside 102. The 229 is filler, right?
But then you would have 52, 61. Let's not forget, they still got their own 61. Then you would have 83. Then you would have, what'd you say, 102?
102.
102 and 128, which is your own pick.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And like I said, that 229, that's just an afterthought. I like those. I like
you want more shots at the dartboard.
Yeah. So now instead of
Brian saying the same thing, extra picks, better chances at a good starter.
That's 5 picks you started off with, and now you've got like 9 picks.
9 picks. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would do that if you didn't have to give up anything else. Yep, I would do that.
All right. Now 2012. So again, moving on action here. Pretty good here for Washington, and the fact that this is how many times this has been traded. We're only to 2012, and we've already had, this is our 7th hit.
Yeah. The
Okay.
pick is moved.
Yeah. 2012 is a trade back situation as well. This time, Baltimore traded their 29th pick for the 35th and the 98th.
35th and 98. That's a little better than 33 and 108 or whatever. So I mean, that's pretty much on par, I think. That one, I don't know if I would do that one.
Not so high. It's less picks. I know that, but it's both in the top 100.
And it's also interesting that, you know, you have these numbers and these numbers are great, right? But it's also interesting to see who guys are trading up for. Like we talked about Cleveland trading up for Njoku and such. So in the 2013 that you talked about that New England traded out of, and Minnesota came in on that, and that's where they took Cordero Patterson with that 29th pick. And then the year before that in 2012, when they went from 29, gave up 29 and got 35, and what was the other one? 35 and
98.
And 98, they moved up to take Harrison Smith, who's been a captain, who's been a stud there for 12, 13 years now. So another good move, I think, by Minnesota to move up and give up only those 2 picks.
Yeah. So Trey asking for those names, and those are some pretty good names taken at 29 there in 2013 and 2012. OG DMV mentioning this. If they traded back to 52, the way they did, the New England did in 2013, for the 52nd, 83rd, 102nd, and 229th pick, that means they didn't like anyone early.
Or when the way the board fell, Adam Peters said in his press conference today, the board is set. They know exactly what they want to do. And if they get to that point and they don't like anybody at that capital at 29, then they'll definitely look to trade back.
This is where I'm telling people the buckets. You got to look at the buckets because if he doesn't like anybody, you know, in that who's available at 29, he might be looking at his B bucket going, these guys are going to be available. And I would like 2 or 3 of these guys rather than one A bucket guy. So that is something to point out. I didn't mention this for the draft in 2013. So the 29 moving back to the 52nd, I actually have this year's version of that one to equal things out with Seattle. We would trade the 29th and the 128th.
Oh,
but we would get the 52nd and the 92nd pick.
No.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good deal at all. For Baltimore in 2012 to trade from 29 to 35, that one's a little bit juicier for us. So trading away the 29 this year to Tennessee with the 35th pick, you get 35, 120, and 141. So 2nd, 4th, and 5th round pick. So.
And by the way, the Ravens with 35th pick, they took Courtney Upshaw, the linebacker from Alabama, I think
too bad.
Yeah, I think
not too bad
quite a while.
Going to be 4 years after that where the pick saw some movement in 2008. Indianapolis traded away the 29th and some picks from 2007. So they traded away a future first. Okay. So they did a trade in 2007 that included their first rounder in 2008 to get San Francisco's 42nd pick. So they were moving up in 2007. They wanted to move up. So they traded some 2007 picks and their first rounder in 2008 to get the 42nd pick overall in 2007.
So who did that? Who made that move?
That was Indianapolis.
Ah, okay.
So to take, San Francisco's 42nd pick. 06. Gotcha. Okay. The last one where it does not involve, this was a trade back situation multiple times. Denver to Atlanta, Atlanta to the Jets. So a lot of movement on that one in 2006 as well. So last one.
And the Jets ended up with Nick Mangold, center.
Mangold, there you go. Hey, that's a good name.
Yeah.
That's a good name. All right, last one that I picked out, 2004. Okay, lots of movement. Like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 times in 21 years. So almost half the times this pick has seen movement. Only 4 of them were trade back situations. This being the last of them here in 2004. Indianapolis trading away the 29th and 90th pick for Atlanta's 38, 69, and 125.
29 and 90 for 38, 69.
So it'd essentially be 29, 128 to get a couple of second rounders and a 4th round pick.
They did all that to go get Michael Jenkins, a wide receiver from Ohio State. Meh.
Not as good.
Not great.
Those were the trade back situations. That's what we're looking at when it comes there. It was something. I asked Ryan specifically, hey, what are those names that you're wanting? He listed off some of the quarterbacks that people are wanting. Maybe those will be available, and maybe we ourselves will have a trade back here when we get to our mock draft. Stick with us. Thanks for joining us here on the Cool Down, episode 222. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. See, Trey is headed to bed. We appreciate you jumping on. Make sure you stick with us, though, if you are wanting to. We're going to do at least a couple mock drafts, get this going here for us. It's our final one. Last one before it's real. We get actual factual draft starting tomorrow. We will share our reaction, make sure, to Washington's first pick, which, by the way, neither of us think that it's going to happen tomorrow.
No, I don't think so. But you got to find somebody who wants to trade up. But some of these quarterbacks are interesting in that they're not first-round quarterbacks, but teams are still going to want to make a push for them early in the first round again. So if they do work out, they have that 5th-year option. So there may be a team that's going to jump up for a Tyler Shuck or who knows how far Shedeur Sanders is going to drop.
Milroe is one who's very popular right now. I'd be way okay with it. Let somebody fall in love with them, and then you can move back there. By the way, Tommy T, we didn't mention this one. I had it tagged for Ryan, but Tommy shared Daniel Jeremiah's draft with us, some information here. He's saying is just notice Daniel Jeremiah didn't have Mike Green in the first round. There's always going to be some surprises. I'll say one that surprised me was the first comment Tommy shared. Daniel Jeremiah's final mock just came out, and we pick Jahdae Barron. He's a corner out of Texas who is pretty high on people's boards. So that one is
Daniel Jeremiah. I think of all of the draft gurus who are out there, I really like Daniel Jeremiah. He really breaks it down and does a really good job.
He does really good. His top 50 prospects is more important than where his mock drafts, though.
Yeah. If his name is not Ryan Fowler, though.
Yes. Yeah. Ryan Fowler is by far the best. We did have him on in the game. If you're catching us just now, make sure you go check out that conversation. Maybe there's a few players that he mentioned that we'll take here in this mock draft. Turbo, because we're not moving up. We're just not moving up. James Pierce Jr.
Oh, he's there.
Ryan said that he thinks he falls into the second round. Maybe it's there. Nick Scorton is another name. Benjamin Morrison, the guy that Ryan would take at 29, the guy that our viewers don't like.
Wow, there's a lot of guys there that I really like. I like Amos. I like Scorton. I like Morrison.
By the way, Barron goes 17 here to Cincinnati for Daniel Jeremiah's take. Noah Marion Hampton taken off the board right before by Detroit, which doesn't seem right, but okay.
Right. Because they definitely don't need him, but hey, best player available, right?
Yeah.
Now you got 4 running backs. Who are the other guys at the top?
Hairston
available.
Hairston's still available. Burden, no.
Oh yeah, Burden and and Pierce. That's right.
And Gray Zabel.
If that's my list and nobody will trade back with me, I'm going with Scorton. I think
Scorton, I think is pretty good.
I'm kind of off of Pierce. I just don't like the off the field stuff.
It's questionable, right?
Yeah.
And there's definitely some question in that. Let me offer you a couple trades here, and chat.
Okay.
Get ready, okay? Because there's 2 trades.
All right.
I'm good with Scorton. I'm good with Scorton if that's the way we want to go. But we have 2 offers on the table.
All right.
Okay. The New Orleans Saints, the first pick up here, they are willing to trade pick 40, 93, and 184.
Ooh, 40, 98,
93,
93, and which one?
And 184. A second, a third, and a 6th rounder. Locked on Law wanting 71. I can try. I can push back a little bit.
Just those, and then offer them, take 40 and 71, and then offer them 128.
No, why would you do that?
Because I don't think you're getting 40 and 71.
What if I just did 40 and 71, not 184 in there?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that.
All right, let me Falcons are also on the phone with you. All right,
I'm listening. Falcons.
They're willing to give up pick 46, 118, a future third, a future fourth.
46, 118, future third, and future fourth. I can't do that. I don't think so.
A lot of people saying no. So are we saying no to New Orleans as well? Pick 40, try 71?
40 and 71. I mean, I would do that with quickness.
All right, let's try pick. We're going to try 40 for 29, 71. By the way, that's our 93rd pick. That's getting our pick back.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and then I said 184. We'll see if only has a 39% chance. They accepted.
Dummies.
They accepted with this.
Ditka back there running their draft thing again.
Who knows? Cool. All right. Hey, look at that. We got we went from 5 picks to now 7 picks in the draft.
Nice.
Going to have several selections here in the second round, and some third round selections to go. So, by the way, they took Zabel. By the way, that is who they ended up taking with that pick, North Dakota State. Pierce Jr. going one right afterwards.
Yeah.
So someone had mentioned Scorton going to the Giants in that regard. And Benjamin Morrison, the name that we were looking at as well, off the board.
Bad decision. We blew it.
It happens. Maxwell Hairston's still available. That's a guy that they really like, and I'm pretty sure your guy should be out here. Trayvon Henderson is available.
Oh wow, Trayvon's still there.
It looks like Iman Wari has been pulled off. I didn't see where he got 36. Picked, but 36. What was 36? Okay, yeah. So he got taken just before Morrison in this regard. All right. Hairston, that's John Keim's pick. Cornerback. Some good stuff there for him. That's the guy that you were thinking.
Yeah.
Grimjaw saying take Henderson, run the card in. Henderson says Brian T. Beal. Tommy T. grab Hairston. I do think Locked On Law. I do think that they like Revel as well.
That's who I wanted. I mean, that's the guy who runs like a 4.24 or something like that.
He has health issues.
Yeah. Well,
he does have health
1 year
issues,
of health,
is a
yeah.
thing, torn ACL.
Yeah. I mean, if you go by your way of doing things, we got to take this Kevin Winston Jr.
So Trey saying it as well. Trey saying Adams picks the highest rated. We don't know his board.
Yeah, that might not be his highest rating.
Yeah, his highest is not going to be the highest. It might not be Kevin Winston Jr. or Norman Lott. I do think that they are really high on Hairston.
All right, let's take him. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. So yeah,
right.
I'll take him.
We're going to take Hairston. We'll see if Henderson's available. Remember, we have a couple more picks here early. It does not look like we were able to snag Henderson. Revel, by the way, going at 52. That was our other guy we were looking at. Travion Henderson, the worst case scenario, going to Dallas at 44. So rough there.
So that's our only pick, right? We just have our corner, right?
Yeah, we have a corner. That's all we did is Hairston so far. Caleb Johnson was a name that we mentioned out of Iowa. Dylan Sampson is a guy that I know some people were high on that we did not put in our list of running backs.
Right now I like Ivy.
Jared Ivy is who I'm staring at right now.
Yep.
I'm trying real hard not to look at that one, but I'm just like, we'll let people talk. Jared Ivy, that's my pick for the record. Going to Porter, Darian Porter,
another corner.
Corner though, Trey.
Yeah, I mean,
we just took Hairston. I can't in my right mind take Darian Porter.
No, I would take Ivy.
Yeah, we just went Hairston. Seems like Ivy's going to be the right one. I'm not sold on Caleb Johnson or Sampson here as running backs. Demetrius Knight, I'm thinking that linebacker later that that he mentioned out of Pitt might be an option. Yeah, we're going to go with Jared Ivy. Trade back from Brian saying keep 29, trade back from 61. That might be something to keep an eye on. So remember, we traded our 29th pick, so we're picking right at 71. So Judkins went just before this. So we missed out on Dylan Sampson as well. Scatabo went right before we took Ivy, for the record.
Porter's still there.
Porter is still there.
Yeah.
Do we go for another corner? I don't feel like that's the
I would.
best. You would?
Yeah.
2 corners. Let's take a look at the Andrew Makuba, 6 foot, 190 senior out of Texas. Lack of a run defense skill set may turn off some teams and immediately moving away from Andrew Makuba. Let's look at Darian Porter. Let's see what we got here. 6'4", 200 pounds, red shirt, senior. A wide receiver turned cornerback. Where have we heard that before?
And then I'd cut Lattimore. So take him and then cut Lattimore.
Well, interesting for that one.
Who else is out there? RJ Harvey is a guy that Ryan Fowler really liked.
Yeah. Let's take a look at him. Lots of missed tackles, receiver production. 5'9", it's a little small, but elusive.
Yeah, but I'm not taking a running back.
Not taking a running back at 71.
You can talk to me about a running back in a little bit, but not now.
Yeah. RJ Harvey was a couple people's picks there. People saying we shouldn't have taken Hairston. A lot of people still loving Porter. Can't take Porter in my right mind. I couldn't do it right now. We've taken an edge rusher, right? So we've answered corner and edge. Anyone else jumping out at you?
No, I would have Taking Porter.
You're taking Porter.
I would, but
Josiah Stewart was mentioned. Edge, another edge.
I mean, I wouldn't hate it.
Less juiced up pass rusher, less than ideal measurables.
6'1", 245. Okay.
Packs a punch, good leverage.
Up to you guys.
All right.
We're not taking Restrepo. I mean, he's the worst athlete in this draft. But he gets open and he catches the ball.
Yeah. Jeremiah says Hairston goes at 23 to Green Bay. So I think getting Hairston with our pick at 40 is pretty good there. Kyle Kennard instead of Stewart. Kennard is an edge rusher out of South Carolina. 6'5", a little bit more there towards what?
A little light though at 250.
254. But I think I want to say, do you remember what Adam Peters said he liked in a? I thought it was 6'5", and I feel like 254 is not too far off.
I don't think he said weight. I think his was height and arms. And the shuttle or the first 10 out of the 40.
I'm good with Kennard. If people want to stick with Kennard, Martinez is another name that's mentioned. Miami running back, 6 foot, 232 pounds, early down NFL back with good size, play style to match.
If it's up to me, I am not drafting offense.
Not drafting offense.
Nope.
Not used a lot. 160 touches, 195 touches, 161 touches. Not a receiving back. Definitely an early round back. So let's give it up to this. Kennard or Martinez? Let me know.
I go Kennard.
Yeah.
That's who I would take.
Kennard. We got one vote Kennard from the Stoner. Need bodies. Safeties. The Makuba is not a run stopper. I have to stay away from him. And none of the others, there's no other safety here in this particular scroll. So gonna stay away. Looks like Kennard is the answer.
Lockdown wants Jack Sawyer over Kennard.
Is Sawyer even here?
Yeah, he's there, but I don't think he's
he right now is having a lot of particular. He is there. But yeah, I know there's a lot behind the scenes going on. He hasn't done any of the measurables. He hasn't done anything outside of like talk with players, our teams. So I'm going to go with Kyle Kennard here.
All right.
As the pick. And now we wait until 128. There's a safety for you, Billy Bowman Jr. Couple QBs. Who are you don't want a running back, but our viewers want a running back. And I feel like we have
at 128, I think you talked me into it. And I think I would take Jaden Blue.
Jaden Blue is
isn't he like super duper duper fast?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So
he's a speed demon.
All right, viewers, we're taking a running back at 128. These are your picks. These are your top choices. You see them. It's Jarquez Hunter, Jaden Blue, Rashard Smith, Trevor Etienne, and Kalel Mullings. Blue.
Is that his problem?
Is that what it is? Reed, vote for Reed. Where's Reed? I'm taking guys that aren't even on the board right now.
It must be a different position.
Yeah, it must be. Smith, Rashard Smith out of SMU. Let me read Smith. We got some people shouting for Smith here. Really only 1 year of production, 232 touches, 1,300 yards last year. Lightly used the 2 years before it. 5'10", 196 pounds, a senior at 22, could be highly productive receiving back in an offense that emphasizes his skill set and ability to align anywhere on the field. While he likely doesn't have the frame to handle 20 plus touches per game, he could be a weapon for 10 to 15 especially with his abilities to create mismatches inside defenders in the passing game.
I like Blue.
You like Blue?
Mm-hmm.
Smith being a former wide receiver. Here we go. Jaden Blue is one of the best athletes in the 2024 running back class with top tier long speed and short area explosiveness. If he can add strength and improve his ball security, he has the potential to be a home run threat. Okay. But Jaden Blue, guys.
Good
Blue.
enough. Good enough.
Good enough for me. Etienne, I remember reading about him, not a happy camper with him. Rashard Smith, I hadn't heard about, which is why I went to that one. Feeling like we got to go with Jaden Blue here. Home run threat. That's what we were looking at. 128. There we go. 184 coming up. This will be our only mock draft tonight for the record. But now we're getting into the Malachi Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that linebacker that he mentioned, though?
Arkansas, was it?
I thought it was it Penn? Who remembers? It's not any of those names. I don't remember any of those names.
There's a Penn name in there.
Maybe it was already taken. Kobe King, Shamar James, Lindenberg, Reed. I don't remember these particular people here. I was just trying to see some of those Ryan Fowler names. We're just going to look at all the positions again. I know Malachi Moore is a name, but that's honestly, that is just the SEC Alabama bias.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So don't get too far in love with that one. Just
you could literally pick best player available here for me because you're getting in.
This is where we're getting into those deep names. I was just trying to see if we could find some of those finds that Ryan was talking about. And it doesn't look like here. Pick 184, by the way. I don't see your wide receiver out here either, unfortunately. Tennessee, he's long gone.
Oh,
I had to pick him at 128. So no Dante Thornton for you here. Malachi Moore, unless anybody has a problem with it. We got
all right. I like it.
So moving on.
Tommy says Brandon George.
George, linebacker, was, I think all the linebackers were much later picks. We could probably get them at 205. Oh, George was the name. Brandon George was the name that they're looking at. Okay. Yeah. Because I was about to say all the linebackers there, 225 and later. So yeah, nobody's going to be near the top of here. I'm good with taking offensive linemen here.
All right, sure. Connor Colby, Iowa. I mean, he's a corn-fed kid. Yeah, so hey,
let's look at it. 6'6", 310, beefy boy.
Yeah,
love it. Tyler Cooper is his 6'6", 310. Both great. Colby's a higher. I had to spend a couple years in Iowa, so I'm going to take the Iowa kid. And last but not least, pick 245. Who was the quarterback that he mentioned? Just to really,
I'll know.
Tommy Mellott.
Yeah,
we're gonna do it for Ryan.
For Ryan. I don't think we're gonna get graded very well. So, it's taking a long time to grade it. That's not good.
Yeah, they didn't like Jared Ivey. Why would you take Norman Lott, a defensive lineman, over edge? That one doesn't make any sense. By the way, Connor called me an A. Yeah, A minus.
Oh yeah, A minus. Look at that. That's pretty good.
Too bad. Brian, normally we do like taking a kicker as a joke on the last one, but we had to give a shout out to our man Ryan today. He's going to be busy this week. We are going to be looking forward to the draft. We appreciate everybody jumping in here. This was our final mock draft. We appreciate everybody being kind and not spoiling the caps score for my man Stoner. He's gonna watch the game right after this one. When the pick comes in, we plan on giving you our reaction. That does mean we're not going to be live tomorrow. Don't look for us to be live tomorrow. 3 hours I can't personally do it health wise. It would be too much for me. So we had to really sit and talk as a team on whether or not it was the right idea to do 3 hours and possibly not end up making a pick. So when the pick is in, you can expect us to record something, get it out immediately. So we hope that you'll watch that. We appreciate you watching tonight. Mock draft season's over. Thank goodness. I will try to find fun ways for that to be something next year. But we're done with it this year. We appreciate you jumping in. Make sure you hit that like button on your way out. Make sure you're subbed to the channel. Make sure you're sharing so other people can get in and join the conversation as well. We appreciate Locked On Law, Tommy T, Brian, Doug, Trey, JG was in the house. Gregory showed up. George was here. Grimjaw was here. Franchise Talk, of course. Many, many more joining us in the conversation live as we prepare for the NFL draft. We appreciate Ryan Fowler joining us as well. And until next time,
let's go Caps.
Be a fan.